Welcome back, adventurer, to Becoming the Hero. I'm your DM, Justin Lewis, and together you and I will implement the lessons from our favorite heroes, real or fictional, to help us add more adventure to our lives, create worthwhile memories, and level up in every meaningful way. We are here to help you become the hero of your story. I love ensemble stories. I love a group of diverse characters with diverse skill sets coming together to pull off some job, heist, or coup. And one of my favorite parts of ensemble heist stories is the planning montage. I always enjoy seeing the characters come together to figure out whose skills fit where. The mastermind always sits down, writes a list of their assets, makes a plan to minimize any liabilities, and then connects the skills to the needs. The mastermind makes the plan come together, and as Hannibal says from the A-Team, I love it when a plan comes together. Well, it's time to put on your mastermind hat. It's montage time. You and I are going to do the same thing, but for your life. We're going to map out assets, liabilities, strengths, weaknesses, and so on. Together, we're going to help you perform a personal inventory to know what state your home base is in, and help identify the foundation upon which you can grow anything else. But first, a small anecdote. When I was growing up, I loved playing StarCraft. If you're unfamiliar with it, it's a real-time strategy computer game where you control a faction of military units and you fight against an opponent controlling a similar faction. You can build buildings and train military units. And I remember playing StarCraft via a LAN connection, raise your hand if you know what that means, with my friend Ty. I looked with jealousy at his base and noticed that he had so many more units and buildings than I did. In an effort to catch up, I would click the build button over and over and over again, and all I would hear was that Protoss voice saying, "Not enough minerals," or "Not enough Vespene gas." At the same time, I would get alerts saying my units were being attacked. I lost continually. I did poorly because I wasn't mature enough to acknowledge the little dashboard that showed me how many resources I had, and also I didn't have patience to wait for resources to come. But I didn't really understand my situation. It's the same way in life. It's very difficult to know what you need, how to get it, and how long it's going to take when you don't have an inventory telling you that information. And that's the point of creating this personal inventory. It's almost a scoreboard you make to help yourself gauge and guide your efforts. If you've played any sort of RPG, you know that your inventory is what you have. In video games and tabletop RPGs, it's often your backpack, bag of holding, or other space where you hold stuff. And generally to make you look cool in the game, and not like you're carrying a bunch of stuff, you aren't actually depicted with that stuff, even though it is in your inventory. Doing a personal inventory is somewhat similar. You're going to write down things that you have that you don't quite carry with you all the time. And it's more a comprehensive and slightly abstract inventory. One other thing. A personal inventory is just that. It's personal. I'm going to suggest a few things that I would recommend everyone put on their inventory, but yours is going to be different than mine. And I'll tell you, that's good because you and I value different things. So let's get into it. Number one, you want to write it down. I recommend you write all of this down. In my opinion, on paper is the best option, but I understand that we live in a digital age. So writing it down helps stick it in your mind better, and it helps you slow down, which is something I struggle with, and really articulate your thoughts. It makes things more deliberate. So, the first step is to get a writing implement and prepare your mind. Number two, separate it into categories. While video games consider inventory to be anything you physically have, with this personal inventory, you need to take a good look at all the things of life that you have, physical and otherwise. I recommend you split the inventory up into 4 categories to help keep yourself organized. Obviously, you can do whatever the heck you want, but here are the 4 categories I would split it up into. Number 1, resources. Number 2, skills. Number 3, relationships. And number 4, causes. If you haven't noticed, I've split these up based on the 4 personal quests I shared in episode 1 of Becoming the Hero. But how you separate them doesn't matter. But you need to have some sort of organization. Otherwise, your brain is probably going to melt. Another reason for splitting them up into your 4 personal quests is that it's easier to see your inventory in the context of your chosen personal quest. And if you don't remember that, go back to episode 1. You're going to want to create spaces for the inventory as it relates to your foundation, more on that in a second, and spaces for your inventory as it relates to your specific quest. This will come in handy for number 4 down below. Number 3, fill out the categories. don't worry about filtering yourself. Just put anything into the categories that you feel you have. And I would actually do this in 2 phases. Number 1, the foundation phase, and number 2, the quest phase. When you build a house, you always start with a foundation. That's because you don't want your house to sink into the ground. That gets pretty inconvenient and can ruin your day. But with your personal growth, you need to look at things in kind of the same way. Growth is risky. Trying to reach goals means you're spending time and effort on things that may or may not pan out or pay off. You may be one of the few that enjoy that risk and are able to make it work for them, but I'm not. I want calculated and procedural growth that can be predicted and replicated. I want massive growth, but I also want to eat and sleep with a roof over my head. This is what I mean by a foundation. I believe everyone should have a solid foundation from which they can springboard their amazing dreams and ideas. So in your foundation space on your inventory, write down anything you have that allows you to survive and maintain your life. That is what I mean by a foundation phase. And the quest phase means writing down specifically what you have for your personal quest. And it's much easier to understand that way. Number 4 is write down what you lack. In a separate space, write out what you specifically lack in each of these categories. Now, I know with myself saying this, I'm going to hear thousands of people writing that they lack billions of dollars. That's not the intent of the exercise. Instead, you really got to look at your inventory in the context of your personal quest and your foundation and think about what you need in order to achieve your quest or create a solid, protected foundation. And this simply identifies what you need to acquire in order to reach your quest or create your foundation. And here's a little caveat. It may be tempting just to write your personal quest as something that you are lacking. If your quest is to pay off your debt, then you might write a certain dollar amount as something you lack. Fine. Great. That works. But don't stop there. Write that you lack some self-discipline skills or some money handling skills. Write that you lack accountability partners or a financial advisor of sorts. Write that you lack a reason to pay off your debt or a greater cause to support if you had money. Try and think deeper. Go past your shallow answers. Number 5, finish the document. Seriously, finish the inventory and then go do something else. You've earned it. Seriously, go just leave the document, come back in a day or so, and relook at it. And number 6, as I said, return to the document. This may be the most important part. After at least a day or so, come back to the document and read through what you wrote. Feel free to make any adjustments or additions that you see fit. Don't try and edit everything, but take an opportunity to really get real with yourself. Were you being as honest as you thought? Did you let the truth soak the page? If not, then now's your time to fix it. Bonus tip as well, find an accountability partner. Find someone who you can share your inventory with. This tip is a bonus tip for 2 reasons. 1, not everyone should share their inventory. Sometimes it just doesn't make sense and actually won't be helpful. It might even be hurtful. Number 2, not everyone is comfortable doing this. If you do this, though, make sure you find someone who will be honest and will help you find blind spots or things that you've missed. It's a great way to help yourself find some clarity. And actually, one last note on clarity. The big reason to do an exercise like this is to find clarity. Ambiguity creates a very harsh environment for the seeds of growth and development to flourish. Instead, you need specificity and simplicity. By performing a personal inventory, you allow your seeds to find those nutrients easily. It clears up the picture and makes moving forward easier. In fact, right now I'm working on building out a hydroponics garden. And I'll tell you, it's a lot more difficult than I thought, primarily because I haven't quite nailed down exactly how to read the specific tools that I use to tell me how many nutrients are in the water solution. I'm working in ambiguity, in a sense. And once I figure that out, it should be much easier to dial down what my plants actually need. Now, obviously, I know that this is somewhat kind of an abstract thing for me to say on air. So I'm going to start talking about exactly what I would write for each category. And hopefully this gives you some ideas on what you can do for your personal inventory. So number 1, in the resources column, I would say this is what I would write. First of all, let's remember that we need to keep things simple. As far as money goes, I think there are so many things we could write down, but only a few that we actually should. I think that you should only write down, when it comes to money, number 1, your net worth, and number 2, your net income. In simple terms, this is the value of what you own minus the value of what you owe. And how much comes in each month, and then how much goes out each month. This is a quick way to see if your financial resources are growing or shrinking. Now, I also want to speak about other resources. Money isn't everything. Here, you're going to have to get specific about what you are trying to accomplish for your quest. And for all of these, let's look at an example quest of driving the Becoming the Hero podcast to 1,000 super raving nutso fans. And I would qualify that as a cause quest. So for resources, I would write down that I have a Samsung Q2U microphone, time, a list of previous guests, access to riverside.fm, my photographer wife, and my other podcast, How to Be a Better DM. As you can see, the goal is really to identify what I have at my disposal. And if you're like me, you'll realize that there are some low-hanging fruit opportunities that you didn't realize were there. For example, my photographer wife. I take her for granted, and I don't always ask her for her help, but I realize that I could probably use her photography services much better because she is ridiculously amazing at photography. Not just that, but I like spending time with her, and so I think that would be kind of a win-win for me. I just got to make sure to figure out how to make it a win-win for her and not just use up her skills. But specifically, I can write resources that I think I lack for the goal of reaching 1,000 super raving nutso fans. And I'm pretty sure you can think of some resources, but I'll just move on to the next one. Number 2 is skills. Here you want to write down all your skills that you feel you're pretty good at. And I'm thinking like on a scale of 1 to 10, this is anything where you feel you rate 7 or above. These are considered your proficiencies, like in Dungeons and Dragons. If you're proficient in something, that means you get to add your proficiency bonus, which means you're fairly good at it. So for example, I feel I am proficient in hosting podcasts, public speaking, speaking Italian, being likable, dungeon master, DMing, consistency. I'm pretty good at SEO, and I feel like I'm pretty good at 3D printing, and I'm very good at content ideation. This one can be extremely helpful to gather some feedback from others. Ask them what skills they would put as proficiencies on your character sheet. Stress that you aren't fishing for compliments at all, and instead are just trying to figure out what you're good at. Then, write what you feel you lack. And in my case, I feel like I lack networking skills, social media strategy, editing, podcast promotion, guest outreach, email marketing, course creation, coaching, and community engagement. Here, I must remind you that this isn't for your ego. It's not a pity party. Instead, you're trying to take stock of what you do and don't have. Doing this inventory becomes useful when strategizing for your quest. You can assess which skills are important and which can be outsourced or forgotten. Number 3 is relationships. First, in your inventory, I want you to write down your 5 most closest relationships. In my case, my wife, my father-in-law, my friend, and my friend. Just so you know, I didn't mention names just so that I could keep their identities private. I don't want to list anyone on the air who didn't give me permission to. But I want you to try and rank them in order of importance. This is going to make the list more meaningful and push you to think more deeply about what you're writing. Now, write a list of the 5 most impactful relationships for your personal quest. For me, it's number 1, friend, number 2, wife, number 3, friend, number 4, friend, and number 5, friend. Now, write a list of relationships you feel that you lack. Make sure that these are not name-specific, but more role-specific. If you lack friends, then write it on the list. If you lack teammates, mentors, servants, or anything else, put it on the list. And the reason why you don't want to make it name-specific is, everyone can write Elon Musk on their list, but is that really what you need? Not everyone is going to benefit the same way from having Elon Musk in their inner circle. And for sure, Elon Musk is not going to benefit by having everyone who writes his name on a list in his personal circle. So for me, that list contains a mentor, an artist, a partner, perhaps a virtual assistant, and maybe an outreach specialist. And the nice thing about these lists is they're not set in stone. You can always come back and check up on these and change things out if you feel. Number 4 is causes. This may be the most ambiguous section, but stay with me. First, write down all the causes, organizations, or factions that you feel you've allied yourself with. Basically, write down any cause you've expended energy to help succeed. Now, next to or underneath those causes, write down why you've allied with those causes. And I'm not going to share my personal list because it is personal, but next, you're going to write down causes that you want to ally with but haven't yet. Now write down why you want to ally with them, and more importantly, why you haven't. Remember, this exercise is descriptive and not prescriptive. You're not telling yourself what to do, rather, you're telling yourself what is. After you've written all that down, like I said, put the paper down and go do something else. Come back to it in a day or so, and then reread what you've written and change what you've need to. By performing a personal inventory, you know the lay of the land. Well, the land of your personal development of sorts. And you've created somewhat of a map of everywhere that you've been, and now you know where you can go. If you have any questions about a personal inventory or just want to show off yours, go ahead and comment on our Instagram at Becoming the Hero. But thank you guys for listening to today's show. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Come back next Monday for another great show, hopefully. And until next time, happy adventuring.